So you've got a single musician with his 4-track tape machine here that is recording linearly, track by track. You've got an 8-people orchestra here that you can constantly redirect and give new instructions to. How's it going, everybody?
You know who it is.
My name is San Wu, and in today's video I'm going to try to answer the question that I've been asked a lot on this channel, and that is, which one of these two is better, the OP-1 field or the OP-XY? To get straight to the point, none of them is better than the other, but if you asked me which one I would keep if I could only have one of these, it would definitely be the OP-XY, but that doesn't mean that the OP-XY is the better one for you, because even though they look very similar, these two units are very different in how they work and how you use them. So let's talk about what is different about them. If I had to boil the difference down in as few words as possible, I would say this is a classic 4-track tape recorder with an instrument attached to it, whereas this is a sequencer-based synthesizer and sampler groovebox. But that may not be enough to explain the whole thing, so let me go through it and start with the OP-1 field. The founder of Teenage Engineering modeled the original OP-1 after his music creation workflow from when he was a teenager, and I think his brother worked in a music store so he could borrow different equipment and record it at home on his 4-track recorder. So you would borrow synthesizers, drum machines, pedals, and record them onto there. That's why this is focused on being a 4-track tape machine. And what that means is that you would be able to only record one instrument at a time, because when you are working with a 4-track recorder, some of them have a limitation of having only a single input that can be recorded at any given time, which is the case on the OP-1. You can only have one active instrument that you are able to play at any given time. Then it needs to be recorded to tape, and then you record a new one. And that's exactly what you get here. You can select an instrument, be it one of the many synthesizer engines or the drum sampler or drum synthesizer, and then you can add an effect to it. In this case, it's the spring reverb, but there are also many other effects like the fan favorite cow, delays, filters, reverbs, and all that kind of stuff. And then you record it to tape. And then you record for as long as you like. You can record a whole performance in a very long take, up to 6 minutes. And then you go back to the beginning, move to the next track, and record another instrument. So in this case, I could select some drums now and play the drums. So now the tracks are recorded to tape. There aren't too many things that I can actually change about them afterwards, but I can change the volume. The drums were pretty loud, so I'm turning them down. I can also pan it left and right. You hear that with headphones. And you hear that my tape has ended now. So it's still playing, but I haven't recorded that far. And that's how this tape works. So it will only play for as long as I have recorded onto the tape. I can also do things like loop this first part. In order to work with a smaller part of music, but apart from this, there aren't too many things that I can do after I've recorded the material. So what is important to take away from this is that you have to get it right while recording and not rely on changing things afterwards. So if you mess up a recording, most of the time you will have to go back and redo the recording. So erase what you have done and re-record it. There are a few editing things you can do, like cutting the strip of tape and then lifting it and moving it somewhere else and dropping it there. But this is very minimal editing compared to something you could do on the computer in a DAW. So it's not too good to rely on wanting to edit things afterwards. It is important to nail your performance and get it right in the first place. And this exact workflow is the biggest downside of the OP-1, but also its biggest strength at the same time, because it can be super annoying if you are recording a long stretch of audio and just mess up a tiny thing and you can't really go in and edit it without it being noticeable. However, it is also really cool that you can record a long performance, because this allows for making changes natural in the performance, and it can give you a more human feel to the song later on, because everything is a little bit more improvised and just sounds more natural, because this is like people would have recorded in the past when they had an instrument and they played the whole song through and recorded the whole song. So maybe the timing was off a little bit in this place, or a note was a little bit louder in that place, but that would give the song its vibe, because not everything was necessarily robotic. And it also allows you to feel the song. So when you have recorded one track of audio and then you go about and add another track to it, while you are playing the second track and recording it, you are going to hear what the first track is doing, and you're going to react to it over time, and you're going to feel yourself into the song, if that makes sense. And that can be a great strength of the OP-1. And I know I'm brushing over a lot of features of the OP-1 Field here, but this is really to highlight what is the main feature that differentiates this from this. So, 4-track tape recorder, you can only play one instrument at a time with one effects pedal attached. You record that, then you change your instrument and record another layer, then you change your instrument again and record another layer. And that's basically it. And now to the OP-XY, which, as I said, is a groove box, and that means it all revolves around a sequencer rather than a tape machine. Sequencers store note information on a per step basis, and then if you play the sequencer, it will go through these steps and send that note information to a certain instrument and play it back. So let's say we enter a few notes into the sequencer and play it back. It will give us exactly these notes in that sequence. And the advantage of this workflow is that you can easily change out any of the notes within the sequence on the spot without having to erase the rest of the sequence. So I can delete the note or put a new one there. Put one here. So I can change everything without deleting the rest. But I don't have to type it in the sequencer this way. I can also record on top live. So it accommodates multiple ways of working and getting your music into the sequence. This means none of this sequence here is fixed. I also don't even have to stick to this instrument, so I can keep the notes the same, but select a different synthesizer. That one doesn't sound good. Next one. You get the point. It offers a lot of flexibility because everything can be changed at any point. And another advantage over the OP-1 is that not only can I edit this track and make changes to it, but I can do this to all the tracks at the same time. So for example, let's add some hi-hats here. And now other drums. And I can mute any instrument at any given time. And I have 8 tracks available here for these instruments. So I have 8 tracks available that are easily changeable and very performance friendly. And here I have 4 tracks available that are not easy to change after they are recorded. While that may seem like, okay, then the OP-XY is the obvious choice if I got more tracks and I can change them afterwards. But one thing I would say here is that for people who have a hard time deciding, maybe the OP-1 Field may be the better choice, because once it's recorded and you either keep it and you say, well, this is it, that's my take, or you have to delete it and therefore also commit to deleting that take. So maybe if you want to force yourself to commit to something and get things done, the OP-1 Field could be better in this case. But of course, the OP-XY offers a lot more flexibility and you can make small changes when necessary. And again, the OP-XY is only able to make these changes on the fly because it is based on a sequencer workflow. And the sequencer doesn't contain any audio material, but note information and velocity information that it then sends to an instrument to play. I think it's easiest to think of this as an orchestra with 8 musicians. So we've got 8 tracks, each is a musician, and each of them can have a different instrument or the same instrument. The sequencer is the note sheet in front of that musician. So the musician plays what is on the note sheet, but I can go in at any time and change any of the notes on the sheet. So you've got a single musician with his 4-track tape machine here that is recording linearly, track by track. You've got an 8-people orchestra here that you can constantly redirect and give new instructions to. Another important thing to highlight is that because this records audio files, the storage needed for a single project is much higher than on the OP-XY. The OP-1 Field can only have 10 projects saved at any given time, whereas the OP-XY, I believe, can have hundreds of projects on there and not run out of space. So those were the broad strokes. Now let's get into a few details maybe that I think are worth mentioning. First off, yes, the OP-1 Field also has sequencers built in. The reason I avoided talking about them so far is that the sequencers in here are much simpler than anything the OP-XY can do and are not the most important part of the workflow. The core is the tape, the core is the sequencer, and here the sequencers are more of an afterthought or a supporting role. So let's have a look at the sequencers. In the finger sequencer, you can have a different pattern on each of the white keys. So you can actually save 14 sequences in this sequencer. See, different patterns on each of the keys. And this is the only sequencer within the OP-1 that can have multiple sequences saved. Every other sequencer can only have a single sequence saved in it, and then if you want to create a new sequence or make changes, you have to delete the old one. So that means you are very much stuck in what you are doing at the moment, and if you want to do something new, well, you got to do something new, and that's it. Also, the sequences in the finger sequencer, they are global, meaning even if you change projects, the sequences in them will still be the same, whereas on the OPXY, all the sequences are saved within a project. Basically, think of it as the OPXY having endless sequences and variations available for you. Another thing is that in the sequencers on the OP-1, you can see these dots here. That's all nice and well, but where are the notes that I am actually playing? You don't get any visual feedback about what note is playing at any given time. Whereas on the OPXY, not only do I see these dots here, just like there, but also my notes down here on the keyboard will light up and show me exactly at what point what note is playing. And that, of course, is a huge advantage if you want to go in and edit the sequence and just change some things. Another thing to remember about the sequencer here is that still we only have one instrument or one musician currently recording into the tape, meaning I cannot have multiple sequences or multiple musicians playing at the same time. So I have this one sequence here, and then once I have created the sequence, I have to record it onto the tape. And stop, and then add the next sequence to it with a different instrument if I want to. Again, here I have 8 sequences with 8 musicians running at the same time, and I can change them each individually. So the sequencers here are used to record into the tape in the end. It always ends up on the tape, and the tape is the main workflow. Another huge advantage the OPXY has over the OP-1 field, in my opinion, is sampling and sample management. So I've got this drum kit loaded on track 1. By the way, shameless plug for my newest sample pack available up there. And I've got this sequence. So let's say I like almost everything about it, but I just want to change out the snare drum sound. I can do this by selecting the snare drum and going into my sample folder by pressing Shift and Sample. And now I can go to my snares and change the sound as the sequence is playing. And all the other sounds within my kit are still the same. So this allows me to just exchange a single sound within this drum kit while everything else stays the same, and even while the sequence is running. And that is something that is not easily possible on the OP-1 field without massive workarounds, because all the drum sounds within a kit are stuck together in one single file. You see this up here. This white marker indicates in which place within the large file I currently am, and you see it's just moving from left to right. So all these sounds are within one sound file. That means I cannot just change a single sound out of these. Which again shows you that the OPXY is a lot more flexible than the OPXY. And so far it may seem that I'm only praising the OPXY over the OP-1, so let me talk about something that the OP-1 does better than the OPXY. One advantage the OP-1 field has is when it comes to recording external instruments. So if you can play an instrument and you want to record that alongside your synthesizers and your drum machines, then the OP-1 field may be a better choice, because as I said, it allows you to record up to 6 minutes in one go, which is something the OPXY cannot do. You could go in either through the TRS input or record straight into the mic, such as this, and even affect your signal. What a wonderful musical performance, but I think you get the point. You can actually record music onto the tape and then play it back. And while the OP-XY has external inputs like the TRS input and the mic input too, with which I can get my kalimba sound into the device, there is no proper way of recording a complete performance into here, such as I can do on the OP-1 Field without a little workaround. Yes, I can record things into the sampler and then string them together, but the longest piece of audio recording that I can record in one go on the OP-XY will be limited to 20 seconds because that's the maximum sampling time for a single sample. So I could record multiple takes of 20 seconds and then string them together within the sequencer, but I cannot, like on the OP-1 Field, record for 6 minutes straight and have that saved as an audio file. And now you may think to yourself, well, the OP-XY has a tape track as well, doesn't it? Yes, you are right, but these two are completely different. I've made a dedicated tutorial on the tape track that you find up there, but in short, this only records the last 16 steps of your sequence and resamples it and lets you chop it up. It is not a substitute for this type of tape here. This is not meant to record audio and keep it in there forever. It's a momentary sampler and glitch effect, basically. So yeah, the tape in here is nothing like the tape in here. The sequencers in here are nothing like the sequencer in here. I see how this could get people confused, but to sum up, I think overall this is my machine of choice. I like sequencers, I like being able to change things after the fact, but I see how the OP-1 Field, for example, could be better for instrumentalists that can play an instrument and want to record multiple takes. I think if you can play the piano, for example, and can flawlessly record your takes, then this would be much better and maybe more creative and maybe even simpler in that way. Whereas I find this is easier for me, for someone who goes about it a little more experimental and has to try things out in order to see if they work. And yeah, it's just easier to make mistakes and then correct them again than it is in the OP-1 Field. But again, there is no better or worse, it's just personal preference. Hold up, I'm gonna let you finish, but editing woo right here. I noticed I didn't talk about the synth or the effects engines in both units. And what I gotta say there is that both of them are good. There are different synthesizer engines on the OP-1 Field than there are on the OP-XY. The OP-1 Field, for example, has a vocoder and has a string synth engine, which the OP-XY doesn't have, but maybe some of the OP-XY's engines are better than some on the OP-1 Field. And same for the effects. There are different effects on both units, but they all cover a wide enough ground, so they are all personal preference. Check sound examples in other videos to see which one you prefer. If you tried both of them, please let me know down in the comments which is your favorite of these two, and I thank you for watching the video. I hope to see you in the next one. Until then, have a wonderful time and check my other videos. Check this, that. See you. Peace.